My parents split up before I was born. My brother was raised by my dad, and I was raised by my mom. And I grew up in a small town of Norwich, so I classify myself as a little bit of a country boy. I lived most of my life in the city as well. I was popular as a young kid. I was great at sports. I excelled at certain sports. When I got into high school, I was an air cadet. I did theater work. I went to church. I accepted the Lord originally at 9. I was baptized in water by age 11. I actually sang in a choir at age 10 at a Baptist church, and became the drummer of a Pentecostal church by the time I was 14. Read the Bible twice through, except for Revelation the second time through, by the time I was 15 years old, and I carried a lot of knowledge. I carried God up here, but not enough of him in here. And as a teenager, I made a conscious decision to see what life was like on the other side of the fence. It wasn't peer pressure for me. My friends all knew that I was a Christian kid. I was the one who asked for that first beer. I'm the one who asked for that joint. And I was walking with both feet in the church, one foot in the church and one foot in the world. I accomplished a lot as a teenager. I was, like I said, I was doing theater work, and I was even nominated to be valedictorian of high school. But between the ages of 16 to 18, I totally left my faith. By the age of 21, I denied God was real and that Jesus was just a man from history, and basically committed the act of apostasy and lived my life the way I wanted to live. And I met a woman, and we had a family. I had 2 daughters, and we raised those kids in a lifestyle where drugs and alcohol were acceptable. I became a drug dealer. I worked full-time. I actually became a gravedigger and cremator, which got me the nickname with the death metal crowd as Graveyard. Graveyard became my nickname, because no one could remember Steve. I don't know why. I don't get that. For years, people just knew me as Graveyard. It became my identity. So here I am, this biker guy. Always had motorcycles. And in this lifestyle, as you've seen in the video, that friend of mine introduced me to the needle, and that destroyed my family. And I wanted to clean my life up, but I didn't know how. And I was on a blind date, and I met a woman, and we got engaged, and we were together for 5 years. And it was during that time I had quit dealing. I was doing great. That 20-year dream that they were talking about, I always wanted to be a professional wrestler. And of course, I was always a smaller guy. So in my youth, I used to do steroids because I wanted to be big. And injuries sidelined that. So at the age of 32, I actually began training for that, and I was working as a hobby on the independent circuit while I was doing my training. And the day that I was hired to wrestle my first match was the day I wanted to go and celebrate by getting cocaine, and hence the accident. And I lost my leg, dream gone. Spiraled me out of control to a point that crack and drugs, because when death and dismemberment insurance, all of a sudden I've got almost $250,000 in my bank account, made it very easy for me to spiral out of control when you have that much money. And you surround yourself with other drug users, and they can be like leeches, but I don't want to call a drug addict a leech because they're a person, but it's the whole aura of addiction. It's just a negative concept of addiction, that people will use you, and you will use people. You will manipulate and lie and cheat and steal or do whatever. So I'm at that point, that broken point, where my mother came to my house one day and she said, I didn't even let her in the house because of what was going on in the house. And you've seen some clips, I think. That was actual home footage. Some of that was actual home footage that was taken from a video camera. Police were routinely at my home at least once a month for something. They never did arrest me, which is surprising, but that's another story. I just learned why. It was what we call a marked person. People weren't interested in the drug addict. They were interested in the drug dealers that came to my home. The year I was training for the pro wrestling as well, I had 2 opportunities to join 2 outlaw motorcycle clubs. I turned them both down for reasons that I was trying my best to be a family man. I was trying to be that dad that I had failed to be in the 90s to my kids. But I was still using drugs, doing the biker life, partying, and I was a hang-around the clubs, which it means you're accepted in. And I was offered the 2 prospect patches, but I did turn it down. Probably one of the wiser moves in my life. But to be honest, a lot of guys in the biker community are solid people, to be very honest with you. It doesn't mean they're good people. A lot of them are good guys, but I've met some very, very cold-hearted people in my life. And I found myself getting to that same depth where there's a lack of compassion for people. So my mother shows up at my house. We're in my laneway, and she tells me about Teen Challenge. I said, Mom, I don't want to go to no faith-based program. You see, I was an avid atheist, trying to disprove God's existence through science, and mocked anyone who had a faith in any form of a deity. But I knew I needed help, so actually to get her out of my house, I said, okay, I'll go. And she showed up on that Sunday in September of 2010. And I had been up for 3 days straight. I was wired. And I got in the car and I said, Mom, I don't think I should go. I'm not in good shape. And she put the car in reverse, which automatically locks the doors. So I couldn't get out. I was trying to get out of the car as she's backing out of my laneway. And I was belligerent with my mother for 15 minutes, just screaming at her, and she just had her hands on the steering wheel, and she was just very calm, and she just said, you promised me you would go. That was all she said. Then I was exhausted and gave up the fight. And we got to her church, and to be honest with you folks, I don't remember much of the Teen Challenge choir performance that day. I kept nodding off. I was sweating profusely. My shirt was soaking wet. My mom kept rubbing my wet back, crying, because she's hearing the testimonies, and I'm missing everything, because I was doing the nod. And thank God for Marty and John. So during this time, I go home that day just to go home and relapse again. And I went for that tour of the farm again. And during that tour in December of 2010, a couple months later, Marty and John came running up to me. And they're like, Steve, we've been praying for you every day. Are you coming into the program? I said, well, I'm here to check it out. And what blessed me the most wasn't the fact that these 2 Christian guys prayed for me every day. I was more blown away because they remembered my name. And that really touched me. And I put myself on the waiting list just to go home over Christmas 2010. Did I keep saying 2010? 2000. I'm lost. Sorry. 2006 this was. I'm screwing up my years. You do this so often, and I get everything going in my head. 2006 this was. And then January 4th is when my mom had to come and find me where I'd been held up in this. It was my home, but I had moved out of my home and it was sitting empty, and I broke into my own place and doing drugs for days again. And my mom came and said, come on, we gotta go to the hospital, your granddaughter's been born. And you think, when you walk into a hospital room and you see the disappointment in both your daughter's faces, and you see a little beautiful baby in a bassinet, that's going to be the final kicker to motivate you to get yourself clean. But when you're at that point in your life, you're like this. On one side, you want to get help and you want to get your life clean, and then on the other side, you just want to die. And I wanted to die more than ever before that day because I felt so worthless. I had tried 5 attempts to detox. I had tried to get into another drug rehab program, and I got there on my intake day and I failed a drug test because you have to be clean to get into a rehab center. It makes no sense to me, but that's the way it is. They sent me home because I had drugs in my system. So every Monday we'd have to call into Teen Challenge and say, I really need help. And some days I was so desperate I'd be crying, leaving messages for the late great Peter Herbst. He used to be our intake man, Dr. Peter Herbst. And I'd be going, if I stay out here, I'm going to die. Now I have survived 3 serious motorcycle accidents, a car accident, and a boating accident, and I was sober only one of them times. I have I've survived 5 witnessed drug overdoses, where a friend had to pull the needle out of my body while I was convulsing on my bathroom floor. I've survived 2 suicide attempts. 10 people I have used with are dead and gone to drug overdoses alone. Another 8 are gone to suicide. And another 3 are gone from diseases that they attained through their drug use. It's very real. And I thought I tried to be one of those people. When you're at that point where you actually want to take your own life, there's no hope left at all in your life. Finally, May of 2007 comes around, and I had been out for, again, days on end. A girlfriend of mine for 1.5 years, we were both serious drug users. She had betrayed me, and these 3 friends of mine, they had betrayed me in huge ways. And I've been angry before, and I've been in a lot of fights. And when you're angry, you're like, I'm going to kill you. But you're more or less like, you mean I'm just going to hurt you real bad. But I actually got to a point where I wanted to take human life. And I called my mother in the middle of the night, and I'd been gone for quite a while. And I called my mother at like 3 in the morning, and I'm screaming into the phone how I was going to go and shoot these people. I said, Mom, I'm just telling you, I'm just calling to say goodbye. I didn't want to tell her I was going to commit suicide, but she knew what I was talking about. And I said, I'm going to go and shoot these people, and I'm not coming home. And she was crying on the other end of the phone, and she said, Steve, I didn't know how I was going to get a hold of you, but Teen Challenge called today, and there's a bed for you tomorrow. And I just said, no, Mama, I give up. I said, I'm very tired, and I just want to sleep. And I hung up the phone. But instead of getting on my Harley with a stolen plate and an invalid license and no insurance to go from one bad neighborhood to a worse neighborhood to go pick up the gun from my friend and then go and hunt these people down or shoot them, I found myself riding on my Harley down the 401 now I know I was really high, but I know what I was seeing. There was such a windstorm. It was like watching videos of a tornado and the grass whipping around. It was blowing garbage out of the ditches, and a great big screen TV box blew out of the ditch, and I thought it was going to hit me, but it hit the wall of the 401 median and folded right over it. And I was literally riding on a 45-degree angle. The wind was that strong. Now I know, if I could see through spiritual eyes, there was a war going on there. And I made it home to my mother's, who opened the door at 4 in the morning for me, and she hugged me tighter than she ever had before. And the next day we went to Teen Challenge, and I thought, I slept for 18 hours. And we went in on May 17th, 2007. And I entered Teen Challenge thinking I was going to fail a drug test. And the intake gentleman, Jason, he was sitting there, and he was telling me, Steve, you can't use that language here. It's a Christian program. And I'm like rolling my eyes. And then he said, okay, Mom, you can go. And I grabbed her wrist and I slammed the table and I said, where's my drug test? And he says, oh, we don't do that here. And my mother ripped her wrist out from under my hand, grabbed her purse and ran out the door. And I'm yelling at her, I'm only doing 4 months, because Teen Challenge is a 12-month program. And she just said, I'll see you then, as the door closed behind her. And she just went, Lord, he's all yours, I can't take anymore. So here I am, stuck in Teen Challenge, faith-based program. And I was just, my world was just rocked there. And I was a very angry and bitter and broken man. But something was working for 49 other men, and that was Jesus Christ. And I wish I had time to get into every detail of every God moment I had, which I used to call coincidence to this. That's a coincidence. The staff would go, coincidence, really, Steve? God was there. And I rededicated my life to Christ, and I said to him, if you open a door for me to go and share your story, I will do that. And over the past 10 years, as I graduated the program, did a year internship, did a year as a staff member. But the past 10 years, I'm still with that choir, the Teen Challenge choir that I swore I would never join. And I have been blessed to travel this country from St. John's, Newfoundland, as far west as Banff, Alberta, and and I have been very blessed to be able to share and speak to many people. And during this journey, in September 2011, I had my third accident, and a car pulled out in front of me, and I collided with it on my Harley, and that's what snapped my finger off and maimed my left hand, and already losing another appendage was one thing. And as soon as I looked down and seen my finger pretty much gone, I went, there goes my day. What was the biggest blessing, because it was during that time of my faith where I had burned myself out the first 3 years because I was pouring in, and I didn't mean to, but I put ministry above God and family. And where all of a sudden it just became routine. Here we go again. And so when Teen Challenge said, Steve, we're not going to renew your contract, I was relieved because I was extremely burned out. And I went home and I didn't take those tools Teen Challenge gave me because I was roaming from church to church. I didn't know what church to join. I didn't know what God wanted me to do with my life. So I called this my 14-month wilderness tour. And during that time is when I had this accident. And I was mad. I'm like, Lord, what more do you want from me? What more parts can I give you of my body? What do you want? And again, I wish I could get into every detail, but I will share this. The woman, when the pins came out of my hand, I had 5 pins like all through my hand to hold my hand back together. The lady's working on my hand, and she says, it looks like you've got a story. So I started sharing my testimony. And she says, you spoke at my church before. And I actually mentored her son in Teen Challenge when I was a staff member. And this lady kept saying to me, do you got a home church yet? Do you got a home church yet? You hear this 3 times a week for a month. I'm thinking, God's trying to tell me something. And through that journey, through that church, when I got grounded in a men's group, and I got grounded in a small group, and I was part of a worship team, and I was a youth leader, and I was very actively involved, my fire was back. The passion for the Lord was back. And driving home from church one day, it was like, it's only happened maybe once or twice, but twice I think, but I heard a peaceful voice say, Steve, I want you to go to Bible college. And I laughed out loud. And I said, I am too old. And not a word of a lie, that voice just said, Moses was twice your age when I called him. And I punched the steering wheel, and I'm like, this is crazy. So I started praying about it, and I said, I need confirmation. And God confirmed it in really cool ways. And out of the 4 Bible colleges I was checking out, I thought Emmanuel and Kitchener would be the last one I would go to. And I said, God, you got to make it very clear. Well, they were the first school that called. And it's a long story, but it was a beautiful journey where now here I am at Emmanuel Bible College, and in less than a month, I'm going to be graduating. I didn't use my pictures. I'm sorry about that. So I had pictures of all this. Anyways, I'm used to someone else running that, and then Billy said, you're going to have control, and I'm like, I can't do multitask like that. I'm not my wife. I'm going to be graduating in less than a month with my bachelor's degree in youth ministry and counseling. As you've seen in the video as well, I met my wife there, and people would say to me, you're going to go to bridal college and you're going to get married, and I'm like, I'm old enough to be these kids' dads. And I met my wife there, because there's students of all ages at EBC, which is beautiful, mostly young. But I'm telling you, I've met some beautiful young people that never strayed from the Lord as a teenager. And their passion for the Lord, and they say, Steve, you have such an awesome testimony. And I go, you know what? I said, my testimony caused a lot of pain, and it still hurts to talk about. I said, angels cheered for you when you avoided every pitfall I fell into. Angels cheered for you. Do not ever think that your testimony is boring, because your story is going to touch someone else. And I just want to bring home the point that I was my mother's test of faith for over 20 years. She prayed for me and never gave up on me or on God. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my mother's intervention. I believe that with every ounce of my being. You know, to look at me years later, you know, I am a heavily graffitied, titanium reinforced temple of God that is from the inside out. And I'm very blessed to be where I am today. Does that mean my Christian walk has been perfect? Absolutely not. I've not been a poster boy for Teen Challenge. I'm an ambassador, but I've had my bumps in the road because I was a boundary tester. I wanted to see how far I could go. But I am still humble to the fact that I cannot have certain drugs in front of me because I would use them. The draw of the addiction, and I've learned through school, I'm like, God, why do I have this? Why will you not take these triggers and urges away from me? And that's the thorn in my flesh, and it keeps me humble and dependent on Him. And I have to be very well aware of where I go and who I talk to, because even 10 years later, I've had my bumps in the road. And my psychology book at school says, relapse is part of your recovery, but my Bible says it doesn't have to be.
Amen.
And it's just staying and pressing into God, and God has had to humble me and straighten me around. You want Daddy God, there's times I get confident with my head held high, like my son's just learning to walk right now, and it's I don't dare let him go, but there's times where I just, when you want to let go of Daddy's hand and do things your way, and then you fall down, but He's always there to pick you up. And God has been tremendous to financially provide for me and my wife through school and all of this. And the next chapter of my life, when I graduate school, I'm also currently just began my addiction certification, so I'm going to be an addictions counselor. That'll be another 1.5 years of schooling through modules, so I'm going to be jumping out to get into the workplace. I'm in talks with Teen Challenge right now, just praying for that God will be able to use my history and my education to be able to encourage the addict that you have a behavior disorder, and Jesus is the cure. And you can't always do that in a secular setting, and most of the people I meet are not believers. But you know what? I'd say 80% of the people that I meet, let me pray with them, because they're at that place where they got to reach for something. So I always encourage them to never, ever give up. And I'm in talks with Teen Challenge about possibly going up to Ottawa, where they are going to be opening a men's center to help pioneer get it off the ground. It's a big area of addiction, and we just want to pray. You know what, out of the millions, 249 million drug users worldwide, over 2 million die every year. Teen Challenge can save some. And I hope that's the direction I go, but I didn't want to move away either. But for me and my wife said, Lord, we'll go anywhere in the world you want us to go. And, and I'm like, okay, He's not calling us to, Africa or anything like that. And then all of a sudden Ottawa comes up, and it's like, whoa, that's 6 hours away. Count your blessings. Being willing to be a missionary, God told me as well, your battle's in your own backyard. And that's to help battle addictions with people, to stand beside them and walk on a journey with them. And 1 Peter 3:15-16 says, sanctify Christ as Lord in your heart, being ready at all times to answer anyone's questions or accusations about the hope that you have, and to do it with gentleness and reverence. Thank you for letting me come and share today.